distinguished elders, brothers and sisters, wassalamu alaikum. Peace be on all of you, and thank you for arranging this wonderful occasion tonight, this great turnout on what is a very fine evening where all of you could have been walking these lovely dales and moors and this very hilly city that I've been driving around for the last 25 minutes, which is why I'm late. Please forgive me for that, but you chose instead 4 months after the horrific aggression that moved us all, mobilized us all, have faded. The international news agenda has moved on elsewhere. The domestic news agenda is filled with hanging baskets, and I'm talking about the things they bought. If only it was them that were the hanging baskets. Silk cushions and all the horrific stories of these greedy pigs with their snouts and their trotters in the trough of the public's money, looting the public purse for their filling of their own pockets. That's the kind of political class that we have in this country, and is it any wonder that such a political class can be, to borrow Brother Ismail's words, I wouldn't have used them myself, but I feel safe following him, is in bed with the very people who are committing these crimes. Not just, of course, in Palestine, but in Afghanistan, now in the Swat Valley, in the so-called tribal areas of Pakistan, in Afghanistan, in Lebanon 2 years ago, in Iraq until today, and on the drawing board, at least in some of the capitals, certainly in Tel Aviv, if nowhere else, the potential of an attack on Iran. All these people are in bed with each other, and we can see the kind of people that they are from their expense claims. It might seem a petty point to make, but it seems to me that the morals of these people who can claim from the public purse for the upkeep of their moats, I'm not making that up, in 2009 somebody has a moat that he asks the taxpayer to maintain, another has a tennis court who asks the taxpayer to maintain the pipes underneath it. Others have swimming pools. In fact, they all seem to have swimming pools. And that's just the Conservatives. The government were charging the taxpayer for pornographic films and bath floods, and Keith Vaz was your old mucker from Leicester. Not one silk cushion for Keith to sit on his throne. No, 15 silk cushions in a palatial mansion just 12 miles away from his other palatial mansion, but he had to buy one for him because 2 miles a step too. I'm dealing with these domestic points just at the beginning of what I have to say, because I've said it to you in Bradford before, and some didn't like it, some walked out. But I have to say it because elections for the British Parliament will be on us soon. If you vote for donkeys, if you elect donkeys, don't expect them to do anything other than put their faces in the nose bags and eat and drink their way until they're so fat they're going to burst. And don't expect them to do anything for you. We are to blame. We elected these people. There were opportunities to elect others, but they were not taken. And let's not be fooled again. As George Bush tried and failed to say, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. That's the long and the short of it. And my advice to you is this. When people come round your door, well, they probably won't come round your door. They're too embarrassed to show face at the moment, the mainstream political parties, but when they ask for your votes, you have to ask them, what did you do when Palestine was being reduced to rubble and ash? What did you do when 1,400 people were massacred, locked up in a concentration camp, and bombed with the world's most ferocious weapons, including chemical gas? Can you believe it? A country calling itself, not that we accept it as such, but calling itself the Jewish state, dropping gas on people that they ingest and which cooks their bodies from the inside. No cure, by the way, once you've swallowed the phosphorus. There is no point in calling for the ambulance. There is no going back. It cooks you from the inside until you are dead. And so you have to ask these British politicians what they did. Not what they said, because they'll tell you that they were against it, of course. But were any of them with us outside the Israeli embassy being clubbed by the police week after week, night after night? Were any of them with us in Gaza sitting next to Ismail Haniyeh? Were any of them at the airports as we came back from this convoy being grilled by the special branch? Were any of them put on a list anywhere as somebody who should be watched because they stood up for right and justice in Palestine? Did any of them face the kind of attack which those of us who have stood up for the Palestinians, and not just yesterday, but over decades, decade after decade, have done? And when you ask them that question, they will be found wanting, I can assure you, because precious few of them, you can throw names at me if you like, because I have a mind like an encyclopedia. I know who did what and who said what and who voted for what. And I can confidently say here in this city that your members of parliament did very little indeed. Indeed said very little. Never mind did very little, and some of them were actively on the side of the aggressor, on the side of the murderers, on the side of those who destroyed Gaza in those 22 days. It's worth just a brief resume of what happened before looking at why it happened and before looking at what our response will be. Because the cameras have gone away. The profile writers and the news journalists have moved on to other things. Unfortunately, the Palestinians are not able to move on. Over 22 days, 61,200 houses were destroyed. I want you to imagine that figure. I don't know how many houses there are in all of Bradford, but it must be at least half of Bradford. If you can imagine, half of the city of Bradford, every single house in half of the city reduced to rubble. And the families whose houses they were living outside in the elements. Now in the spring, yes, but in December and January in the bitter cold of winter. 1,400 people killed, most of them women and children. Something like 9,000 severely wounded. I never liked the term wounded. I grew up in the era of the cowboy films, when wounded meant your arm in a sling and before the end of the picture you were back. That's not the kind of wounded that occur in the course of such barbaric bombardment by such horrific weapons. We're talking wounded forever. We're talking amputated. 81 people with 3 limbs